Let's be honest, a lot of people are not just bad with money, they're good with survival. They're doing the math, cutting corners, skipping things, picking which bill doesn't get paid this month, and somehow it's still not enough. Groceries cost more, rent is going up, gas, utilities, childcare, medications. Everything feels like it went up. Everything except for maybe your paycheck. And it's not just numbers on a spreadsheet anymore, or numbers in your checkbook, or numbers when you're reconciling your bank statement, right? It's the knot that you feel in your chest when you open your banking app. It's the shame when you swipe your card and you hope it goes through. It's snapping at your kids or your partner because you're terrified and tired. If you've caught yourself thinking, why can't I get it together? Why am I always behind? You're not alone. You're not broken. You're living in a cost of living crisis. Today on Let's Talk Mental Health, Real Conversations the System Doesn't Have, we're going to talk about the emotional cost of this moment. What constant stress, what constant financial stress does to your nervous system, your relationships, and your sense of self. And then we're going to talk about realistic ways to cope that don't require a six-figure income or a miracle. Before we go any further, I have a few little housekeeping disclaimers to go through. My name is Jamie, and I'm your host. And I have a bachelor's degree in psychology, a master's degree in Christian counseling of substance abuse and addictive disorders. I completed my licensure for addiction counseling at Arizona State Prison, and I was an addiction counselor for about 4 years before I had a midlife crisis, realized I wasn't what I wanted to be when I grew up, and that I wanted to write full time. Somehow writing full time has turned into creating a podcast, writing a blog over on Substack, and having a TikTok channel. So here we are. I am no longer a licensed therapist. But if I was a licensed therapist, I couldn't be your licensed therapist because I'm just some rando on the internet. Okay? So this podcast is for education, reflection, and conversation. It is not therapy, it is not financial advice, and it is not a substitute for working with a licensed mental health professional or a qualified financial planner. I'm speaking from research, lived experience, and what I see people going through, but your situation is unique. If you're in crisis because of money, housing, or safety, please consider reaching out to local resources, financial counselors, or mental health professionals. And if you're having thoughts of harming yourself, or you feel like you just can't go on, pause this episode and contact emergency services or a crisis line in your area. If you're in the United States, you can dial 988. You deserve real support, not just some random lady talking in your headphones. Okay, now take a breath with me. In, hold it, and out. Let's talk about the emotional cost of the cost of living crisis. What this cost of living moment really feels like. Let's name what people are actually living through, and let's not use economic jargon, but we are going to name things in human layman's language. And for a lot of people, what does this look like? Well, you might be working full time or more, working 2 jobs, and still feel like you're drowning. You may be using credit cards to cover basics, not just luxuries, or not even have luxuries. You might be doing mental gymnastics of, what bill am I not going to pay this month? Or if I pay this, will I still be able to pay this? You may feel like you are one car repair, one medical bill, or one missed paycheck away from being completely financially. And on top of the practical stress, there's the story that you might be telling yourself. You might be telling yourself things like, I'm irresponsible. I should be further along by now. Everyone else seems to be managing, so what is my problem? But the reality is, when housing, food, and other basics keep rising in cost faster than your income, it's not just a you problem. It's a systemic pressure landing on individual nervous systems. You are feeling the weight of something much, much bigger than your personal budgeting skills. This isn't to say that we have zero power over our choice. It's to say you're not crazy for feeling like you're running on a treadmill that keeps speeding up. So let's talk about what that treadmill does to your mind and your body over time. Let's now talk about what constant money stress does to your nervous system. Money stress doesn't just sit in your bank account with your lack of money. It actually lives within your body. For a lot of people, it shows up in ways like trouble sleeping because you're mentally doing math at 2 a.m., trying to figure out maybe how you're going to have gas to get to work the next day. You might have headaches, stomach issues, or chronic pain that feels worse when bills are due. You may feel irritability. You may start snapping over small things. You may have brain fog, forgetfulness, or simply just feel checked out. And I think like this association can sometimes look like going through the motions, getting paid, paying your bills, but just not really being able to enjoy anything because you're not able to maybe even do something as simple as buy a soda on your lunch break or something like that. You may also feel numb and detached because your system is overwhelmed. And this chronic stress, your nervous system living in a low grade fight or flight mode all the time is not a one-time crisis, but this ongoing hum of we're not safe, we're not okay, we are behind. And when your body thinks that you're in danger, it does not care about your long-term goals. It cares about survival. And that's why things like planning, organizing, and making smart money decisions can feel almost impossible when you're already feeling flooded with anxiety. So if you've ever thought, why do I sabotage myself? Why do I shut down? It might not be self-sabotage. It might be a nervous system that is completely overwhelmed and doing the best it can with the information it has. Now, add other humans into the mix, your partners, your kids, roommates, and you can see how quickly this turns into a relationship full of stress. And now we're going to talk about how the cost of living crisis can affect relationships. Money is one of the top reasons that couples fight. Not because people are evil or selfish, but because scarcity makes us scared, and scared people react. And in real life, it can look like arguing over every purchase, even the smallest ones. One person being the spender and one being the saver, and both feeling like the other misunderstands them. It can also look like hiding purchases or debt because you're ashamed, or resenting a partner who gets to stay home or has more flexibility. Maybe feeling guilty as a parent because you can't give your kids things that you want to. Maybe even something like a birthday or a vacation. And if you grew up with financial instability or chaos, this moment could be reactivating old wounds. And those old wounds could be things like the fear of eviction, not having enough food, seeing caregiver stress, fighting, or shutting down around money. So this may actually lead you to react more strongly than someone who didn't live through that. And this does not mean that you're dramatic. It means that your body remembers. One of the cruelest parts of this cost of living moment is that people are blaming themselves and each other for things that were never fully in their control. So, what do we do with all of this besides spiral? Let's break it up into two different parts, and we'll talk about emotional regulation and practical steps. So, emotional regulation around money consists of how can you protect your nervous system? And before we talk numbers, we have to talk a little bit about your nervous system, because trying to make money decisions from a panic state is like trying to fix your car while it's on fire. It's not going to go well. Here are some regulation focused tools that you can layer in. And you guys are going to hear me say, name it, name it, name it. I probably say name it like 3 out of every 5 episodes, right? Because you have to be able to identify the issue. That's why naming it is so important. But you have to name what's happening without shaming yourself. Instead of saying, I'm terrible with money, you can say, I'm under a lot of financial stress. My brain is in survival mode. And that shift is going to help regulate how you feel about your situation. It's going to feel less overwhelming when you think, I'm just trying to find a way to survive, as opposed to, I'm a piece of crap because I don't have money. Okay. The next thing that you could try is create money time instead of money chaos. Set a short window, a very specific time of 20 to 30 minutes once or twice a week to look at bills, accounts, and plans. And outside that time, you gently redirect yourself like, no, we're not going to spiral about money right now. We have a specific time for that. That gives your nervous system more rest. And I'm going to say one of the things that has helped me immensely in my money journey is balancing my checkbook twice a week. I now find myself not wanting to make even stupid little charges like getting a drink at Circle K, because I know that I'm going to have to enter that into my checkbook. When I balance my checkbook, it has helped me not just mindlessly spend. So if I do that and I'm out somewhere, let's say Walmart, and I'm kind of thinking about an impulse buy, I think, do I want to mess with this later? Because the more purchases I buy, the longer it's going to take me to balance my checkbook. And if my funds get too low, then I'm going to be mad that I spent the money, right? I've had to retrain my brain not to be impulsive while also being mindful about money. This also means that I'm only allowed to stress about money while I'm balancing my checkbook. And sometimes I'll come out like a little cuckoo clock and tell my husband, oh, we got to deal with this, this, and this. And then I'm done. I'm done with it. You can also pair your money tasks with regulation. Before you open your banking app, take 5 slow breaths. Put your feet flat on the floor. Feel the chair under you. Something in your hands that's grounding. A mug, a blanket. Just do these things because it helps teach your body that we can look at numbers and still be present here. We don't have to have an out-of-body experience every time we open our banking app. And this is going to be hard because I know we all struggle, probably most of us struggle with this, especially in the age of social media, right? Try not to compare yourself to others. I always say comparison is the thief of joy. You have no idea how many people around you are funding their aesthetic life with debt, family support, or just pure luck. You can unfollow or mute accounts that might trigger financial shame or comparison. You are allowed to do things that protect your peace. And I also want you to allow yourself to feel grief and anger. It is okay to grieve the life you thought you'd have by now. It's okay to be angry that you work hard and you still feel like you're struggling. Feel those emotions, because feeling those emotions, honestly, is healthier than avoiding it or pretending like you're fine. Once your system is a tiny bit calmer, then we can focus on more of the practical side. And I say this not in a financial guru way, but in a how do we make this less overwhelming for ourselves way. What is practical coping? Practical coping is taking smaller steps that have a bigger impact over time. And I want you to think about this segment. The segment of this conversation is called coping, because we are coping. We are not fixing everything overnight. The goal here is not perfection. You probably didn't get in your situation overnight, so you're not going to be able to fix it overnight. The goal, again, is not perfection. It's creating even a little more stability, a little more breathing room, just something to help maybe alleviate a little bit of the burden you might be feeling. You can try to get a clear, compassionate picture of where you're at. And this is the part everyone wants to skip. And I will admit, I've been guilty of this. Like, I don't want to look at it because then I have to acknowledge it. And acknowledging it means then I have made some poor choices, and then I don't want the shame that goes with that. But I can tell you, once you acknowledge it, then it gets easier to address. And that is actually sitting down and acknowledging it is actually how I came to the decision that I would balance my checkbook twice a week. So I usually try to balance it on Mondays and Fridays. It does bring up some difficult emotions, but simply creating a list of what your income coming in is, what your fixed bills are, like your rent, your utilities, your debt minimums, and then what your variable spending might be, food, gas, clothing, will give you more power than just trying to guess and panic. Look for the smallest, least painful reductions first. Sometimes we don't need a complete lifestyle overhaul. We really just need 3 or 4 small adjustments. In my case, it was the impulse to purchase something because I wanted it. And now I'm trying to focus more on what I need and what I can live without. For now, call and negotiate a bill or subscription, or cancel a subscription. I realized this week I had 3 or 4 subscriptions for things I'm not even using anymore. I was at one point, but I'm not now. One of those was a $70 subscription. I'm not using that product anymore. So why am I still paying for it? And those are little things that can trip us up as well, right? Downgrade if you have to. There's a couple of subscriptions where I need some of the premium features, but it's kind of expensive. So I get maybe the least expensive subscription where I still get the features I need. And also making sure that if I canceled something that I followed through, which is again why I balance the checkbook twice a week. And sometimes even with like your electric bill or your water bill, sometimes they'll have programs for like a one-time hardship. And you just call and say, hey, I'm really struggling this month. I can't pay this bill. and they'll work with you. You can sometimes call and negotiate a bill. One of the things I did for a while, we had extra people living in my home, and it really jacked up the electricity. There was a point where I had, I think, 7 people. Yeah, 7 people in my house. Okay. And, right now we're down to 3, but I got on what is called budget billing for my electric and my gas bill. And that means that when my bill is $500 in the summer, I'm not paying $500 a month in the summer. I'm paying an average of my bill over the course of time. So for about 2 years, I had to pay $332 a month. And I am happy to say we have finally gotten to a place where we're down to $154 a month because we don't have as many bodies here. This year, summer started a little bit late, so we didn't even have to really run our AC till the end of May. We try to do things to cut costs. I recently found out if we can avoid doing laundry and washing dishes in the dishwasher between certain times of day, that'll actually help reduce our bill, things like that. There are many different ways you can look at cutting costs. You do not have to live on rice and beans, okay? You can just find other ways to save. One of the other things I've done is we're making more meals from scratch. We're getting simpler meals. We make more sandwiches, maybe. We're dining out less. We're only allowed to order fast food once or twice a month. We used to order it weekly. There's a lot of ways that you can cut costs. You can, again, switch to a cheaper plan of things that you're working on. You can meal plan. One of the things I did was I had a specific budget. I had to make $250 for groceries last for the whole month. Okay. And so we always do like a basic budget, and then we allow a little bit of room for milk, bread, eggs, cheese, things that are not going to last forever. And even then, if you freeze your milk, you can make it work. We just did it. We tried it. But the whole point is you can meal plan. So I typed into ChatGPT, what is a way, or like, can you make me a grocery list for items that should last me all month long? And I need it high in protein. I need less meat options because the price of beef is killing me right now. So we've been getting chicken, we've been getting ground turkey and substituting those things in. And I was able to do everything on that list for less than $250. ChatGPT gave me the shopping list. And then because I don't like to try and figure out what I need for recipes, okay? I know, I think it's the ADHD within me where it's just like it's too much effort to like focus on that. So I will take a picture of like 6 ingredients I have and then be like, hey, GPT, can you give me a meal idea for this? And it works amazingly. And you can use GPT for free. You can use Gemini for free. There are premium features that are beneficial, but when you're just barely surviving, you can do a lot of things for free. My daughter had this wonderful idea while my granddaughter was here. We wanted to take her out to do something, but we really were on a budget and we really couldn't be driving here, there, and everywhere. And we really didn't have a lot of money to go places, but we wanted to get out of the house. And my daughter was like, let's go to the pet stores. Let's go to the pet stores. So we did that. We went and looked at all the fish and we went and checked out the cats that are up for adoption. And we saw people with their dogs. We checked out the ferrets, the parrots, the birds, the mice, the snakes, everything. And she thought that was wonderful. And it cost us nothing but a few minutes down the street. And there's 2 pet stores. We were able to check them both out. And we came back and we were tired because we'd been walking around the whole time. It didn't cost us anything. And we got to do it in AC. So there are ways that you can do things for low cost. And I say this because your morale is going to be a lot lower when you're living paycheck to paycheck. And I loved the creativity of a kid saying, hey, we can still go find something to do. It's kind of like going to the zoo without going to the zoo. And, it brought our mood up because we felt like, oh my God, we're able to get out, we're able to see cool things. And, she's like, grandma, show me this. And, so it was great. The other thing we did was grandma has a lot of crafting items just sitting around, right? We sat down and crafted with stuff we already had. It didn't cost me anything because we already had it. We sat down and colored with coloring books we already had. We could have done a puzzle, we could have played games. And I think sometimes we can go back to those basic things before we had technology that can help entertain us during those times. But it also helps get our mind off of our struggles. Okay, I got a little off track. So you want a meal plan, 2 to 3 low cost dinners per week. That's why I brought up the shopping list and things like that. You can try to look for one recurring expense that you don't truly value. So for us, I don't need regular TV, right? I don't need cable. I don't need dish TV. Literally only have one network that I actually watch, and that's the Discover Network. So I only pay for the Discover Network. I had a family plan for YouTube so that all my kids could watch YouTube commercial free. I said, guys, sorry, you're going to have to go back to watching commercials. And we cut the family plan. And it sucks, but these are things that we have to do. And it also helps you feel like you're working towards resolution, even though it doesn't fix the problem, right? It doesn't fix the problem, but it does help you work towards resolution. And this is not a plug. This is not a sponsored ad or anything like that. Although I was the sucker of a sponsored ad for the product I'm going to talk about, okay? I have an app called Rocket Mortgage. And one of the things it does is it'll remind me when I have a subscription coming due or something like that. It will also help me cancel subscriptions I no longer need that maybe I forgot about. There is a free version and there's a premium version. You can sustain with just the free version just to start out. You can also set up budgeting in that app. There's also a ton of other apps you can use to budget. But these are all things that help you feel like you're more in control of your finances and less just like treading water. And again, you can check for benefit programs or other support that you might be eligible for. I talked before about how like some utilities will give you a subsidy for 1 month, or they'll make leeway if you've never used, their stuff before because of a hardship. Sometimes you can call and work out a payment plan. If you have a credit card bill, a lot of times if you call them, they'll work with you. Again, not sponsored, but I did have credit card debt that was getting really overwhelming. And another thing I did to sort of take control of that situation was use a company called GreenPath to help negotiate with my creditors a lower interest rate so we could pay one payment to them every month, and then they would pay the bill for me, and it would have a lower interest rate. And it did cost me a little bit of money, but I didn't have to get behind on my debt. They handled everything for me. I just had to sign a few papers. And then one of the companies I owed debt to came back to me and said, we can actually offer you a lower rate directly if you can agree to this for 1 year. Well, yeah, absolutely. I can agree to that for 1 year. So I did it. So you can oftentimes work with people you owe money. You just have to be willing to have that conversation. And when you can't, you can't. You just do the best that you can and try to find another way, see if you're eligible for some sort of benefit or outside resource. You have to be willing to do a little bit of the research. I am going to say that some of this burden of finding the help is going to fall on you. So look at things like rental assistance, utility assistance, food programs, low cost mental health care, places that take medical or mental health care on a sliding scale if it's needed. There is no shame in using that support that exists for situations like this. And I know that it's very stigmatized to say, maybe I need some food stamps, maybe I need, Medicaid, but you shouldn't feel shame for that. If you're paying taxes, that's a benefit that comes from those taxes that you pay. I also want to address the fact that we have to learn to separate survival mode from shame. Okay? You are doing the best you can to provide for you and your family. You shouldn't feel shame for trying to make sure that your basic needs are met. If you're using credit cards for groceries because you don't have enough income, that is not a moral failure. I don't care what anybody says. That is not a moral failure. That is a survival decision in an environment that you might feel like is rigged against you. And you can acknowledge the risk and release some of the self-hate. Like, nobody feels good making a decision like that. But if you have a choice between going hungry or using something that's available to you, what choice are you going to make? And I've been there more than once. I've been there more than once where I'm like, I'm not putting this on a charge card for points. I'm putting this on a charge card because we have to eat and I have nothing left, right? And it does kind of keep you in a sick cycle because of the debt aspect, but we're not going to address that today. Today, we are focusing on not feeling shame for making decisions we've had to make to survive financially. If you have the ability or the capacity, you can think about things like one more brick instead of I need a whole new house. And what I mean by this is maybe do a small side income stream that fits your energy in your life. Maybe slowly build an emergency buffer, even if it's only $10 at a time. Learn one new money skill at a time instead of trying to become a finance expert overnight. If you've never learned how to balance a checkbook, I recommend starting there. None of these things are going to change the fact that the cost of living is high, but it can change how powerless you might feel inside of this situation. And I want to end this and just kind of reiterate what I've said probably several times already. You are not a failure because you're struggling in the economy that we are currently in. You are not lazy. You are not irresponsible, and you are not behind. You're a human. You're a human being, and you are trying to survive a reality where basic life has gotten more expensive than many people's paychecks can even bring in. Your nervous system is allowed to be tired. Your brain is allowed to be overwhelmed. You're still allowed to look for small pockets of power, little ways to take control, choices, tiny choices, bits of support, small acts of care for yourself or your future self. And you don't have to shame yourself for not being able to do more. The goal isn't to grind harder inside of a system that is broken. The goal is to protect your mind, your relationships, and your self-worth while you navigate it. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with somebody who's been quietly panicking about money, who keeps saying, I'm fine, but you can see the stress on their face. And if you want more real conversations like this about the mental health side of modern life, hit follow so you don't miss the next episode. Guys, I am trying really hard to put out one episode a week. I am the creator, the editor, and the publisher all in one. And I do manage creators over on TikTok. I have 54 creators that I currently manage over on TikTok. So there are days where I get up and I say I'm going to do this, and then like the whole world changes. I did recently retire the editing side of my writing business. I will no longer be editing, so I can try to focus more on my TikTok creators in this podcast. So you sitting here and listening to me talk for 30, 40, 50 minutes means the entire freaking world to me. You don't know how much I appreciate it. I have a couple of episodes pre-recorded to upload over the next coming weeks, and some of them have guests in them. So I hope you stick around to see what other exciting things we have to talk about. Now, before we close out, I just want to say, take one more breath with me before we go. I want you to breathe in, hold it, and then breathe out. You're doing better than you think you are. I will talk to you next time.